Hello, Cheriss. How are
Hey,
you?
Polly. Thanks for having me.
Always. I mean, it's an honor, really, just to have you here. I couldn't think of a better way to end day two with you. And so I'm so excited about today's conversation, and I will see how much we can pack in an hour. I mean, I'm just like, y'all, if you cannot see her background, those are her photographs. And I mean, we're just going to have just an amazing conversation today. Cherise, why don't you just tell people, because I know, obviously know your journey, some of your journey, but where does your journey begin?
I'm going to take it back to when I was a little girl. And I can remember I was around 8 years old and playing around with my mom's camera because she was a high school teacher. She was a business teacher, but she was also the counselor for the yearbook. So she bought this camera, this film camera, and I remember her bringing it home. And I remember just being enamored with it and playing with it, taking pictures. And I was that kid that would show up at all the family functions with the camera, and I would take pictures and get excited to get the film developed. And then I would come back to the next function and I would lay all the photos out on the table, and the family would go through and look at the photos. And I don't know if they were just gassing my head up, or if they really thought the photos were good. But they used to remark about how good the photos were. And that, what I didn't know was, planted that seed inside of me, and gave me that extra feeling of, this is something that I really love, and this is something that I can really do. Although, fast forward, my journey didn't start there. I went to Howard University, and I was an advertising major and an electronic studio minor, which pretty much is graphic design. And I thought I wanted to be a graphic designer, so that's where I started my career as a graphic designer. And but I took pictures on the side, because I still like really had this love for storytelling, really had this love for taking pictures. So I was a graphic designer in my day job, and I was a photographer on the side, although I wouldn't tell people it was on the side. I would just, I started getting jobs and work, and I was like, oh. So I would just like schedule things around my work schedule.
And it's so crazy because I don't want to age you, but do you know when that was? Because I feel like everybody feels like if they don't start then, if they didn't start when they were young,
Yeah.
whatever age that was, then there would be no chance to like actually do it now as a profession. But what I
Yeah.
love is like, it didn't matter what you were doing at the time. You still went back to what you loved and your passion, and
Oh, for
you.
sure. Yeah. Hmm. I can't remember exactly when that was. I can say that it was in early 2000 that I got laid off from because I was a graphic designer for newspapers. And at the time, I was working for USA Today as a graphic designer in sports. And I got laid off after, I think I had been there like 10 years. And I got laid off, and I decided to step out on faith and to pursue my love, my passion, which was photography and storytelling, because graphic design was storytelling as well, but storytelling with my camera. So at the time, I was teaching at Howard as an adjunct professor, and I was taking pictures. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to pursue photography, full stop. I'm going to step out on faith and full stop, go out there and see what I can do.
I mean, aren't we all thankful and lucky that she got laid off?
It was a blessing, though. It was a
I
blessing.
can't imagine like the world of photography, the world of photojournalism without you now. And so truly is such a blessing, that happened, because at the time though, of course you can't see that in hindsight, right? You didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
But was there just like other people or other voices that told you like, yes, like, turn that into a blessing, or was it just you?
I did have some close friends who were like, you know what, you should really do this. You really know how to take pictures. Like, you take good pictures. That's what they would say. So I did have a few of my close friends who were like, you know what, like go for it, go for it. I mean, honestly, I had the cushion of layoff money, so that was there, in case I fell or I needed some assistance. But to be honest with you, once I fully dedicated to that, then more opportunities came. It's almost like I was blocking things with what I was doing over here. But then when I opened myself up to what was my passion, which I know is my purpose, then more opportunities came.
Y'all listen to your passions. I mean, your purpose. Okay, so when you first started, after you made that leap, do you remember that first assignment, or how did you even like get to the point where you are, being a professional?
Uh, so I will say there's like two kind of pivotal moments where I was like, maybe I can do this. One was it was actually a friend of the family, and he had an engineering company. And so he asked me to, I would always show up, like I said, to family events, friends events with my camera, just because I loved it. And so he said, hey, my company has an annual Christmas party. Can you take the photos for my holiday party? And I'm like, sure. I'm thinking like, it's an office party, this office Christmas party and everything. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So he's like, okay, I'll have my secretary call you and give you the details and everything. I was like, okay, cool. No big deal, right? So when she called me, she said, okay, so we have the Smithsonian Natural History Museum, and we're going to use 2 levels. There's going to be a scavenger hunt, then we're going to have dinner, and then there's going to be awards, and we want pictures, with the president and each awardee. And I'm like, the Natural History Museum? Like, I'm thinking it's going to be like at his office, it's going to be something simple. So I didn't have the gear at that time to do a job of that magnitude. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't tell him that. But I said, you know what? I'm going to do it scared. I'm going to do it scared because honestly, I think a lot of times we block ourselves. And if we're like too scared to do something, that fear like paralyzes us and we block our own blessings. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to step out on faith and I'm going to do this. And I ended up renting a camera, renting lights because I needed lights and all this stuff. And I didn't even know how to use the lights. So I was on like YouTube and I was like looking it up, like, okay, how do I do this? I was looking up like how to position it and, different, because I didn't know any of that. Because most of what I did was like available light, natural light, never using like studio lights. So I ended up doing it. It turned out well. They were pleased. I ended up doing a book from the event and some prints. And from there, and they paid me. And I was like, oh dang, like I can get paid doing this. Like I just love to do it, just because I love to do it. But I can get paid doing this. And so what happened there was there were some key people in my life that I continued to do work for that were at that holiday party, and they saw me there taking the photos, and they got my information. And one of them ended up being like somebody that called on me through the years, called on me like a lot to do different things for them. And they had a few businesses. They were in the auto industry, and so I would do stuff for their automotive company. They had so many things they were doing, like charitable events and everything. So that actually gave me an opportunity to do a lot of different things. Like they even own like a Harley Davidson. And this was a Black family, which was like, oh, this Black family, they have Harley Davidson, they have BMW, they have Rolls Royce. And, shout out to the Moorheads. Shout out to Tom Hopkins for having me shoot that holiday party. But I was shooting like Harley Davidson events. I was shooting like all these things with cars, and I had never done that before. So this gave me an opportunity to learn how to navigate in different things, which prepared me, I think, for like photojournalism work, because with that, you don't know what you're going to get. And it's a lot of like moving on the fly, shifting, not really knowing, not having the luxury of setting up a shoot, but coming into something and making the best of what you're coming into. So that was the first one. I said there were a couple.
Yes, please.
That was the first one. The second one was when I started shooting at the White House during the second term of the Obama administration. And so with that one, how that happened was I ended up joining an organization called NPPA. I highly recommend it for anyone who is interested in photojournalism, or who are in photojournalism and they're looking for an organization. With them, you could put like a profile page. And with that profile page, you could put a link to your website. You could put some, I think about 10 images and just like a short bio. And so I ended up joining because I was like, you know what? I really like this and I want to do more. And so I started looking into photojournalism, and I signed up for NPPA and set up my page. And I got contacted by this photo agency called Photo, and they're based in Rome. And so they reached out to me, and I thought, like, you know, I had never dealt with an international company like that. So I wasn't sure if they were like legit, honestly. And so I reached out to NPPA and I was like, hey, they're members of the organization. Have you heard about them? Is it legitimate? And they're like, as far as we know, yeah, like they're. So they said, you know what? They reached out to me and they said, hey, we took a look at your work. We really like your work. And we want to know if you would be interested in working with us to cover the White House. And so I was like, yeah, you know, it was like, no question. I mean, during a historical presidency, and, you know, so I was like, yeah. So they start like having me cover events at the White House during that second term. And I just got bit by the bug. And once I did that, what happens, and I say this to anyone that's interested, you know, in that, what happens is once you do the work and it starts getting out there, then other people, other organizations, other agencies, other publications will start to see your work because it starts to circulate. And then you'll get calls from these other publications and other organizations. So that's what happened with me, is the more I started, you know, doing work there and my photos were, you know, getting out there and stories and everything, then I start getting, you know, other publications and agencies reaching out saying, hey, like, you know, you want to work with us? And it just kind of went from there.
What a remarkable, just like testimony. Like, I mean, doing it scared, because if you didn't do that scared, like, I really need that like on a frame or something as a constant reminder. Because I mean, it's true. Like, we do block our own blessings. We do get in our own way all the time.
All the time.
We let those voices of doubts creep in. I want to share my screen now to your site, where people can see, you know, just the history that you are capturing. As someone who, you know, you weren't doing this beforehand, like, how did you learn on the fly of just like these moments that, you know, are freezing frames of history? You're not setting them up. You're just documenting what is happening. What was that like for you navigating this?
The only real challenges, honestly, was learning what I could and couldn't do. Like, there's certain protocol in certain places that you go, whether it's the Capitol or the White House or different things like that. There are certain things, certain lines you don't cross, certain things you don't do. So that was what I had to learn. Aside from that, before that, like, I know I can say this now, but back then I didn't know, but I was always a storyteller. Like, I had that love, that seed was planted, and it was there, and it just, I believe in your growth is continual, your education is continual. Like, I'm still learning things. I'm still growing. There are things that I continue to aspire to, and there's things that I continue to learn. So this is a continual process. And all for me, when I'm shooting, when I'm out there, when I'm doing this work, it's really it's about the connection. And it's spiritual. It's I liken it to music. Like, I love music. I liken it to music. It's rhythmic. It's that connection, and it's how you move. And sometimes it is like melodic, or how you're moving and navigating to make those connections to these moments.
I remember being able to see your exhibition at
Right.
Leica in LA, and you were talking about soul, getting to the soul of people's and that
Yeah.
soul connection. I mean, I don't know. Is that something you can really teach? I mean, as you are an educator, I don't think you can really teach that.
I think you can unlock it.
Mm,
I think that I think, put it this way, I think all of us have a story to tell. It's just a matter of how we tell it. I use
mm,
my camera to tell my stories, but everybody has a story. And that's the thing, is like, no one can tell your story better than yourself. And there are certain things, like, even if you look at with the photos that you're seeing here, some of them, there were a lot of other photographers that were there, but each one of us saw something different in that same moment. You could look at all these other photos, and there will be something different in each of those, because we each have a story to tell, and we're each looking at it from a different lens.
absolutely. I'm just like in awe. Because I mean, you make something as like what, a hearing, like something as boring as a hearing, and then it's just like that you still have this way to just like be creative with that. If it
Yeah.
makes like look at this, if that makes sense.
And I love the challenge of trying to make something that would otherwise people would think is boring, to make it like like visually appealing,
Mm-hmm.
to make it, you know quote unquote pretty. Sometimes, some things just can't be pretty. I
Mm-hmm.
think I always try to look for a different way to tell the same story, because a lot of times, in a lot of these instances, it's going to be the same thing. It's like a grip and grin, or
Mm-hmm.
it's a hearing. There's certain protocols and things that always happen, so people are going to be positioned, the same all the time. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing that changes is the person. So I want to just try to find those ways to look at it different each time, although I've been in that same room so many times.
Mm-hmm. That is just I mean, it shows each time. Is there when you think about your use of color and use of black and white, like these
Mhm.
two, I
Yeah.
mean, I really get a lot of feeling from both of these images. And I feel like we're seeing this and we feel like, oh, they were probably there for like 5 minutes. No, they what, like 2 seconds
Yeah,
to get this
a
shot
lot of
right.
it's like really quick, and you have to be on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some of these things, yeah, it's that quick. And the use of either black and white or color, sometimes I see color, sometimes I see black and white. Sometimes I think it speaks stronger in, black and white, and sometimes to me it's color. So I don't stay just in like one lane with that.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of go back and forth, depending on what I connect to, or what's going on, what the mood is.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And then when you are, capturing these, like, does it still feel like, I don't know, I guess my question is like, you are literally documenting history, but does it feel that way to you?
It does. It does. Like, honestly, it's really a blessing, a lot of times to be there when you know, like, it's history. Like, this is history. And my voice is a part of documenting this moment in history. So
Mhm.
the gravity of that is not lost on me. Like, I feel it every time. And, I feel really blessed to, be able to do that.
There's a question from Adriana. If you are on assignment, do you get to pick if it's black and white or color?
It depends on the assignment. Most photojournalist assignments, they want color. They want color. But in that, you're taking more than one picture, more than one frame.
Mhm.
So, maybe the main photos are color, but then you have like some of those that can be black and white, but they mostly want color for the option of, using it in color, and then they'll post in post, they'll convert it, to black and white if they're using it on a page that's black and white.
Okay. I want to go to this photo of Representative, the late Representative John Lewis. How did this photo come to be? And, when you are, of course, you're documenting these moments of history and even these people who have made history, as Mr. Lewis was one of just, the many civil rights icons. Like, how do you approach that? Like,
Yeah.
does it, the gravity of just even the people you're photographing?
Yeah. And it with that one too, like, a lot of times these are like news events. Um,
Mm,
this particular photo was a press conference for the Voting Rights Act, which he fought for till he passed.
mhm,
But this room was filled with other um, Congress people, and he was standing there with those other Congress people. But I just saw him by himself, even in the midst of everyone else. I just saw him, this icon, and the light, the scounts on the wall. I saw that light, and it just, like, the way it shined, it was just like partially on his face. And
mhm.
a lot of times, what'll happen is, with news events, I always see a portrait in that. There are basic things you have to get for the assignment, but I always see a portrait. I see moments like that. I see It's like those quiet moments are the ones that really speak to me and really draw me in. So this was one of those moments that there was so much noise. There were other people talking, and I just saw him there by himself.
I mean, it's just such an intimate, just like you said, quiet moment that I don't think other photographers, nobody else probably got this shot. I believe, I wasn't there, of course, but I think the way you see things is just so different. There's a question from Adri asking, working on political assignments, you have to be in a lot of volatile and charged spaces or conversations. How do you stay in assignment and out of your head?
Yeah, that's a great question too. With a lot of practice, like, it takes time. It takes time really to be able to turn certain things off in certain spaces. And with time, you get better of knowing how to, like, just focus on the assignment, focus on, that getting those images, and covering that particular moment, and then just turning off everything else, just shutting everything. If you've ever seen, like, and I took a video of this one day when I first came up, but I was in the press briefing room at the White House, and it was this one particular day where President Obama was going to be coming out to address the press. And so you had all the correspondents on that front row of the briefing room, and they're all talking at one time. And all you could hear was, being in the room is like, it's like all these conversations. And I took video of it and I stopped. I was like, how are they able to like tune out these people who are right next to them saying something different? They're all talking at the same time, broadcasting live. How are they able to just focus on their camera and not hear all this over here and do their broadcast? And I like it. Like, I liken it to that because it truly is like, you really have to have this focus and just turn other things off.
And along those same lines, this is a great follow-up question from Maria. We don't see enough of us, as Black photographers, Black women, photojournalists, documenting history in a space like the White House. Do you at times feel intimidated, or do you find a way to block out those, doubts and the, other expectations that have been put on us?
You know what? When I first went there, I did. I was totally intimidated. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to do. I'm just, in here like, okay, I'm happy to be here. I don't really know what I'm doing. So it was that kind of like trying to navigate a space that was foreign to me, and not wanting to mess up that opportunity. Because I was like, okay, I can't come in here and like mess up. Like, I gotta be on point. I gotta do this. We have to do things, 150%, 200% better. I feel like sometimes. So I felt like a pressure, like a weight of, even though we say like, you can't look at one Black person as the representative of all Black people. I knew going in a space where there weren't people that looked like me, other Black photographers weren't in that space. I knew going in that they would, and I'm not saying everybody, but there would be that looking at me like, okay, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna do in here? So I didn't want to mess it up for anyone else coming after me. I did feel that pressure or that weight. And honestly, it was the encouragement of family and friends. I can recall like one of my mentors, his name is Fred Watkins. He's still, out there photographing, and he's a photojournalist. I remember him telling me, do what you know to do. You belong there just as much as they do. So you stand there, don't let them push you around, and you do what you came there to do and what you know to do. And that just stuck in my head as I continued to navigate and come in. And as I went along, as time, went on, then I became stronger in feeling those words that he told me, like, okay, you can do this too. Like, you belong there just as much.
That is a word. I mean, I bring up this portrait that you took of the First Lady, because for me, it's like, when I think about just where I even started, and you started in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yep.
I mean, and now, did you ever think, you'd one day be in these spaces, one day take a portrait of the First Lady?
Never. I never saw that for myself. And honestly, like, when I was in Kansas City, because I was in Kansas City up until I left to come here, come to DC to go to Howard. But I never saw myself as a photographer. I never saw myself, telling stories with my camera. I never saw myself in the White House, in the Capitol, those things. That just like blew my mind. It still blows my mind sometimes when I'm in, certain spaces, and I'm like, okay, I can't believe like I'm here. Like, I still get like butterflies and excited, sometimes. There are some things that I can never talk about where I've been and opportunities that I documented that, you may not be able to even see until I leave this earth. But I know that I did it, and it's like it felt good to be there and to be doing something that I never imagined I would be doing.
Just so inspiring. And I see there's another fellow Kansas City.
Kansas City in the house.
Yes.
All right.
I want to go to some of my favorite photos of yours are the moments you capture, going back to just how you have always been a storyteller and you find the beauty in just every moment. I'm going to pull up the screen right now. Because again, I think it's so easy, whether you're on assignment or whether you are just whatever gig you're working on, to be so focused on like, oh, I have to get this shot or whatever. You may have that shot list in mind, but there's moments that you don't have a shot list for. Talk to us about these moments that you've been able to capture and any advice you have for others who are trying to, not miss these moments.
Yeah, a lot of it, and what you're showing there, a lot of it is being in the moment. That's the first thing. There are a number of times where, I don't just come in like cameras, like, just start shooting. Like, if I have the luxury to like go in and just observe, go in and just survey, go in, talk to people, connect with people before I even pull my camera out, that's what I'll do. Now, some things, some assignments, you don't have that luxury. Things are like that, and you have to like get what you get, in that. But for me, and this is why I said like it's spiritual, because I want to really make a connection. I want to connect to the point that when people see the photos, that they feel something and that they feel almost like they're in that moment and they were there, just as I was there. Like, I want to like just show, bring that to other people so that they feel or they see what I saw and I felt in that moment.
I'm stopping on this photo of Maya because I still remember the story. I mean, you all are thinking she's a great storyteller here. Imagine in person. I still remember this story that you told about how you photographed this. May you share it with us today?
Sure. So this particular moment with Maya, Dr. Angelo, it was, this was her last public appearance. And they were going to unveil her portrait at the National Portrait Gallery here in DC. So I was actually photographing for Smithsonian, and this particular moment, like before she came in, some of her staff, it was myself and like one other photographer who was there shooting for the wires. And they came to us and they said, okay, like during this time she was traveling with an oxygen tank. And so they said, look, all we ask, and all that she requests is that you not take pictures of her with the oxygen in. Because when you have the oxygen tank, it has the little plastic piece in your nostrils right there that brings the oxygen in. And so they said, please, she's requesting, Dr. Angela's requesting that you not take any photos of her with the oxygen in. So, I grew up reading her poetry, respecting the storyteller that she is, and so I'm like, sure, I'm, no problem. So they bring her in. She's in a wheelchair at this time. And they bring her in back to the green room. Myself and the other photographer are there. And so I waited until they brought her into the room. At that time, she had the oxygen in, and I waited. I respected that, and I waited. And so when they bring her in, the other photographer is like rapid fire. And I was like, oh. I was like, the sister girl in me is feeling the sister girl in Dr. Angelou, and she is about to go off on him. So I was like, you know what? I'm stepping out of this. And I felt like, if you've ever seen that episode of The Simpsons, when Homer disappears into the bushes, he just like takes a step back, like, and the bushes kind of surround him. I did one of those moves, and I just backed up to separate myself, from the photographer. And they're bringing her in. I see her like kind of turn. I was like, oh, it's about to go down right now. So as soon as they turned her around, she's facing us. She took the oxygen out. Enough. Enough. And so they came, they're like, sir, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to leave, sir. And so they usher him out of the green room. And I'm still in the bushes, y'all. I'm still in the bushes like, please don't tell me I got to go. Please don't tell me I got to go. So I'm just like standing back like, don't see me. And so, it was like chaotic at first. And then some people left the room. And at this moment, it was like I was the only photographer back there. And I wanted to, from the jump, I was like, I have to introduce myself to Dr. Angelou. Like, I have to, like, tell her how much, I love the storyteller that she is, and, how much what her work means to me, or what her words mean to me. And so I was waiting for that moment for the shift in the air so that it could clear and I could go over and introduce myself. And so just as I felt like that clearance to step forward out of the bushes and go introduce myself, she looked over at me and she was like, baby, what's your name? And so I walk over to her, and at this point she reaches her hand out and we're holding hands. And I said, Dr. Angelou, my name is Cheriss May, and it is my pleasure and my honor to meet you. And she said, it's my pleasure and my honor to meet you, Cheriss May. And then she threw her head back and started laughing. And so I said, may I take your portrait? And she's like, yes, you may. So these are like two of the series, of those photos that I took, after that moment.
I mean, as Ramia just said, Ramia, priceless. I mean, there's so many lessons in that. I mean, one, how do you not listen to the
Hey,
oh.
it was coming. Like it, you would have felt it coming, Polly. I was like, oh my
God. Absolutely.
He's like clueless that it's about to go down right now. Like, she's not gonna be your best friend right now. And not that, I'm sure he's like, well, that's not my job to be your best friend. But it's like, look at all those moments and those things that you missed out on, not being in the room, for that. So that, I mean, that was like amazing. And if that wasn't enough, like, it was her birthday. And so after the event of unveiling her portrait, we went back to the African Art Museum, and they had a birthday celebration for her. So they had a cake, and it had like a bird cage with a bird with the notes coming out. So I know why the cage bird sings. And so she came in. Her son, God rest his soul, because he recently passed.
Yes.
Her son was there. He sounded exactly like her. Like, if you close your eyes, you would think that it's her, like his tone, the inflections. And so we're in this room, and she is she's holding court. Like, she's speaking to everybody. Like, she's saying, hey, look at the little grands over here, and look at these little ones. And so she's like, as I'm sitting there on the floor, like right underneath her, really, with my camera, she's talking. She starts reciting poetry. She talked about being a rainbow in somebody else's cloud. She was talking about how, people go through things, and she's willing to be a rainbow in somebody's cloud. So she actually, like, and I can't sing, so don't y'all don't get me on this.
But you can do a beautiful impression. I mean,
but she was like, She said, when it looks like the sun ain't gonna shine anymore, God put a rainbow in the cloud. And so she was talking about, then she said, I am willing to be that rainbow in somebody else's cloud. And I'm like sitting here like goosebumps. I still get goosebumps thinking about it because I can remember it as if it was like yesterday. And I'm like, I can't believe that I'm here. I can't believe I'm in this place, this space. I can't believe that I'm able to, make this connection. And I'm just glad that she didn't yell at me. That's all, that's all I'm saying. I'll be glad that it didn't get down to that point where she was telling me enough in the like get back. So yeah, that's that moment right there. That's what that
That's
is.
the moment that you will. I mean, as Regina,
Never forget.
you'll miss it by worrying about getting the shot. I
Yeah.
mean, and just not just listening, basic instruction. I'll never get over that. But I mean, just what a beautiful story that now you'll be able to have. I mean, forever.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's one of the last public
Yeah.
photos of her. And in that same sense, there was a photo that I remember from the Leica exhibition of Chadwick, and how you also were able to capture him. Can you talk to us about that, and just like what it feels like to capture people when you never know when it'll be their last moment?
Yeah. Chadwick, I knew as Chad, my next door neighbor.
Yeah.
So Chad was in his last year at Howard, and I lived in the house next door to Chad. And so it's interesting how that he said, listen to mama, they told you how to act. Right, exactly. I remember just having these little conversations with him. He was teaching himself how to play guitar and, just different things. And I remember the last time I saw him before he was Chadwick Boseman, is we were moving. Everybody was moving. Um, I think I was going to Tennessee for a job, and he was going to New York. So I remember he was like, here, take my number, and you should come up to New York. I'm directing this play. And I was like, oh, okay. But I went off to Tennessee, never didn't keep in touch. And, fast forward years later, and I'm, watching TV, and this advertisement for 42, the movie 42 comes up. And I'm like, looking, I was like, is that Chad? Like, I had no idea he had gone on to Oxford, and, that he was doing these things. And, from that moment, he was James Brown. He always played these icons, whether they were real life icons or fictional icons, like Black Panther. But it was always, these iconic, roles. And honestly, it's like, I didn't see him different as Chadwick Boseman than the Chad that, lived next door during Howard, because he had the same like temperament. It was like the same, it wasn't like on a level like, oh, well, I'm doing all this and I'm Black Panther. It was never, never that. It was always this love for Howard. Some of those photos that I have are when he came back and did the commencement speech. And little did we know at that time he was sick then. Like all this time, he was sick, but he just kept pressing on, to do these things, these major things. And, not knowing what was going on behind the scenes, but he wanted to make sure, I guess, that he did these things.
Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, I always ask because you're such a beautiful storyteller. I want to go
Thank you.
back to your site and share this photo that is right behind you of the former
Uh,
First Lady. Talk to about us about this moment.
yeah. So that one, and people think that she like sat for a portrait for that,
Right.
but it was one of those, kind of quick moments. But I'll tell you that I envisioned this moment. Like I anticipated this moment because it was, and I called this photo "Hidden Figures" in the exhibit. Then First Lady Michelle Obama was hosting uh, the screening of the movie Hidden Figures for military families, and so she had all the actors and actresses, directors from Hidden Figures there. And after the movie, they had a panel discussion. So she was talking about, the movie, talking, she was going to introduce the people on the panel. But before that, she started talking about the hidden figures that built the White House. And she was saying, it's not lost on me that here I am, this Black woman as the first lady of the White House that was built on the back of these Black people. So it's like because of what I knew this movie was about, and knowing that there would be some story or connection to what that means as it relates to her position and there at the White House, I anticipated that there would be a moment like this. And so I had my camera ready. I had my position, and I just waited for that moment. And then when it came, I got the moment, and that was it. I just locked on. It was like that quick. And that was it. Because as she was talking about the hidden figures, she dropped her head and closed her eyes, just like that. And once I did that, I said, I felt that I had connected, to that moment, at that moment. So like afterwards, when I looked at it, I was like, okay, this is what this is what I had, envisioned, had anticipated, and thankfully I was able to connect with it.
And it's not lost on me that, here you are as a Black woman photographing, this moment, because how many photos of the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, are by Black women photographers?
Yeah. And she recently had a Becoming show that was out on BET. And I actually was hired to be the behind the scenes photographer for that. So that was like, kind of full circle, to come back, to that and be able to, document that moment and be there, for those times.
I just love, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. When you're thinking about, again, because with photojournalism, there's some things that, like you said, you never know what to anticipate, what the day may bring. So how do you just mentally prepare yourself when you are like getting a quick call, like you have to go to the White House or you have to cover this protest? How do you mentally prepare?
Well, I honestly, I like to start and end the same way, with prayer. And so that's where I start, that's where I end. And in that prayer, like, I'm asking to be connected to the right moments, or be able to not miss, some of those key things, and to just be open to what's going on, because a lot of it is like listening and anticipating and then connecting. um and you just have to have your bag ready, like, my I make sure my batteries are charged. When I first started out, when I first did it, I wasn't thinking about those things, and you could get caught, in a trick bag behind the gun, of, so to speak, of things, and not be prepared. So now I've just gotten in the habit, like, when I come back home, like, I'm charging up my batteries, and I'm putting everything back in the bag, so that if I do get like a last, late call for something, that I'll be ready to, like, to go, and that happened recently with the Ketanji Brown Jackson, because I thought I was just home, that, going to be home that day. And I ended up having to go into the White House and covering when President Biden was introducing her with Vice President Harris. So it was like, I was chilling. Like, matter of fact, I was just like laying in my bed, like, like, okay, this is gonna be like a real chill day. I wasn't thinking anything about it. And I had to hop up real quick and get myself together, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to pass this up. Like, no way, you know?
Absolutely. You mentioned your bag. What is in your bag? Like, body wise, lens wise, how do you prepare
Yeah.
for those shots?
Yeah. In my bag these days, is a Leica SL2 and a Q2. And I somebody's funny. I end up going to the White House, no big deal. um I A lot of times either I'm using like the 24-90 lens, or I'm going to use like a prime lens, like an 85 prime or 135 prime. And then the Q2 is a 28 millimeter, so I can get like wider shots. But also, I like, because of the size of it, I can kind of maneuver in places and spaces that may be tight, which can happen a lot of times when you have like a lot of, photographers in one area. Um, and that's pretty much those two bodies there. And then sometimes I'll bring like the rangefinder M10 and do that. But that's what's in my bag. That's what's in my bag. That's what works for me. That's what I take, and it is serving me well.
In a similar fashion, I love Adriana's question. What are your go-to outfits? When whether it's at the White House or in just a photojournalism assignment,
Black,
allows you to like move
black,
around all black.
black, black,
It's black.
all black, in black. No, for real. I usually have some black pants. I'll do like a colored top. Like, I have on orange. Today I was shooting earlier. Um, I am I like shoes. Like, I'm a sneakerhead. So I may have on, some slacks, black slacks or something, but then I'm gonna have on some Jordan 1s or something, like, or or some Puma. Like, I try to have fun in the shoes. Like, this might be basic, here, but I try to have fun with my shoes. So I have some fun shoes that I'll put on depending on the occasion. And honestly, it depends on like what I'm doing, because if you're like covering some of those hearings, you're gonna be crawling on the floor. So I learned my lesson when I love these. They were some nice shoes too. They were leather though, like slip on. They were really cute. And I scuffed up the top of the shoes, like the leather, like peeled and stuff, because I didn't know about having to crawl on the floor in the hearing room. So I'm like crawling, and when it came down and I'm looking at the shoes, I was like, dang, I ruined these shoes. So it depends on what I'm doing, like what I wear, what type of pants. But it's got to be something that's comfortable, but is, you can wear in certain spaces and not be like, some jeans with holes in them or something.
A follow-up to that, because you never know how long you may be out on assignment, or in the White House or at a hearing or whatever. Do you have some snacks that you include? Like, how do you like eat?
Right. If I'm being good, I'll take some almonds,
Okay.
some nuts, or I'll take something like with me if I know I'm gonna have a long day. Like some of those days at the Capitol, when I know that I'm gonna be there all day, I'll take snacks. I there's like a refrigerator in our office where we can like put our stuff, and so I've done smoothies and taken it there. Take some almonds. I'll take some leftovers, prepare something, and put it in the fridge. And then there are times where you have like, if you're going to be there all day, there's some kind of break where you can like, just take a few minutes to grab something to eat. And if you don't, there's in the White House, there's a vending machine. There's a vending machine you get, or you can walk down a little ways and there's, all sorts of restaurants and coffee shops and everything. And then at the Capitol, they have cafeterias, all sorts of cafeterias in there. And you can, go in there and get some snacks or something to eat.
Is it free?
No.
Okay.
No.
What?
No.
Man.
So make sure you have your Apple Pay
Okay.
or your credit card. There's cash, debit, like something. Yeah.
Okay, now we know, y'all. Now we know. There's another follow-up question to that. Do you do any like go-to stretches before or after?
Right.
Right, because you are crawling, you are moving.
Yeah. For real. Like I just, do the thing where you just like hang and stretch down to your feet. I don't do this all the time, but I'll get down on the floor and, just stretch from side to side. And that is a great question because it does help because you're contorting. We're always contorting our bodies in ways that it probably shouldn't be, with the crawling, the duck walking, the stoop. It's funny because when I saw you in Oklahoma, Polly, I was one particular time I wanted to get like a low angle on something. So I just, I had my cameras on me. I just squatted down and I'm like taking a picture like that. So I remember this woman looked at me. She's like, "You got some strong knees." She was like, and then because once I did that, then I popped back up and she was like, "You got some strong knees." Like she's like, "My knees are blown. Like I can't do that." And I said, "Well, I have to do this all the time. So I've just kind of gotten, used to doing it." But I didn't think anything about it. But I was like, I
Now listen, y'all.
I guess that is pretty good. Like with the cameras, like, going down and stuff like that. And, there have been other moments where you're in like a press van and you have to file photos. So you have your laptop on your lap. The van is like jostling you around like this. And you're like, doing your captions and trying to, but everything is like, so you kind of get used to that. Or, I've done the thing where I'm walking out and I have the laptop in one hand and I'm like doing like this and the camera in the other hand, like, let me get these last shots. And, so yeah.
I mean, we were in Oklahoma for the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, and we walked what felt like miles. This was my first assignment out. I was not ready.
Yeah.
That kicked my butt. That is okay. And you were just like flying by. I was like, oh. One moment I see you up on top of something, another moment like you're squatting. I'm like,
it's like you get low, you go high. There have been instances where afterwards I've laughed at myself, like I can't believe I just did that. There have been moments where it's like we're in like a meadow, like running up a hill, like running with like equipment to catch the president coming out of the beast to get on the helicopter. And so we have to run because he's not going to stop and wait and say, "Okay, I'm here, take the picture." Like he's getting out of the car, like, let me go up so you're running like, I got to get to the top of the hill to get that like one photo, try to get that before he ducks inside of the and then afterwards you have to run back down because then you have to join the motorcade. So then you're like running and I'm like, please don't let me step in a ditch and like break my ankle or whatever. Like all this equipment, I feel bad for the TV people with the big cameras and they're like running. And I was like, you know what? Thank God, like I didn't get into video like that. Cause I'm like looking at the equipment on the video side and I'm like, Yeah, nah. No.
I'm telling you, like, I don't think we talk about it enough, but for real.
Yeah, it is. Like people like if you would just see like half of the stuff that we go through and what we do to get those photos, it's crazy. I mean, the way you're like it's like a balancing act and one time you're running, the other time is hurry up and wait, and then sometimes it's like leaving my house when it's dark outside, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and not getting back home until it's like 11 o'clock at night. And sometimes you're going super early somewhere, and but you're not going to shoot for like 4 hours, but you have to go early because you have to go through these security sweeps and everything else. So it's a lot, and you really I must really love it. You really have to have a love for it to do, a lot of things that, you have to do to get that one moment, to capture that one moment. It's a lot of things that happen, before that, in between, and after that.
Let's talk about the after real quick if we can. After you get these moments, you have fast deadlines. Like you
Yeah.
have to turn it around the same day. Talk to us about your editing, your workflow, your archiving, like all of that.
Yeah. So I use Photo Mechanic and Adobe Lightroom. Hey, Adobe. But Photo Mechanic, you can't edit the photos in there. Like you have to either bring it into Photoshop. I bring it into Lightroom. So you're, quickly putting it in that. You're writing the captions for those photos, and then you have to depending on like who you're working for. If you're working for a wire service like Getty Images or AP Images or Reuters, you have to actually file the photos like immediately, like after that. The faster the better. So it's a lot of you're just quickly going in and making your selection of photos and then doing whatever quick edits, and then you're uploading to their servers. So I
And
do like I said, I do my edits in Adobe Lightroom. I initially bring them into Photo Mechanic, and that's where that's the start of like my archiving. That's the start of my captioning and everything else up until the point of like once we get into the editing, then I'm bringing it over to Lightroom to finish that off.
and for those who may not know what Photo Mechanic is, it dropped into the chat our Photo Mechanic 101 session. We have an amazing partnership with them where they come and do tutorials and also provide licenses to our community because it is a lifesaver.
Yeah, it is. It's fast, like for culling, bringing your images together and making those is really fast.
How do you, because some days you may have hundreds or thousands of photos maybe, how do you then just like organize that system in your archive?
Yeah, so for me, it helps for me to have folders with like either I have like shortcuts or naming systems. Like if I'm doing something at the White House, it's WH. And then I'll put like the date. And then if it's something like when I did Ketanji Brown Jackson, I put like WHKBJ, the date. So then for me, it's easier to say, okay, I'm looking for my KBJs, and I could put that in the search string, and then it'll bring all of that up. And then it's saving it different places. Like, I have it saved in like at least 3 different places. One is um, like a cloud service. It's called Backblaze that I use, and then I have a couple of. It'll be on like 2 different solid state drives, and then I have like an automatic backup to the Backblaze, and then I have a backup sometimes to Dropbox.
Y'all, If that is not some homework right there, a reminder to one, have a backup, have an archiving
Have a backup for
system,
your
and
backup.
then have a backup for your backup. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Such great advice,
Yeah.
practical advice. There's a question for Mary. When not on an assignment, do you carry a camera to capture images that call to you?
Yeah, I do. And that's when I'll take my the Leica Q2 is like the smaller camera that I can just like I could take it like everywhere I go that doesn't take up a lot of space. Like I can put it in my purse. Like I don't even have to have a camera bag, for it. And I'll just have it with me. And then sometimes like Mary, like you said, there's some things that just call to you or speak to you and you're like, "Hey, I got my camera."
I love that. And then how do you, outside of just the assignments or the moments that you'll want to say yes to, but how do you say no to other things that may not be for you that, that you don't feel called to do?
Yeah. And I've talked about this before. I was talking to Polly about this, but there's a power in no. And you just have to get used to that and learn how to say no. So sometimes like it's just no. Sometimes it's a no. Outside of if you're not available, if you have something else, sometimes it's just like a no, thank you.
As simple as that.
No,
There's
thank you.
power in no.
Yeah.
Yes. Just a few more
That
questions.
came with time though. Like
Yes, yes,
I'm
please.
easily saying that now, but it did take time because I used to be of the thinking of you can't turn anything down. Like you got to do everything. You can't turn it down because that just might be, the thing that connects you to something else. So I had to myself, come to that to be comfortable to say no and to be able to just say, no, no thanks.
Let us all say no some more, y'all. Just a few more questions. One is from Janae. How has photojournalism changed for you since the pandemic?
Mm. Um, and that's a great question. And I will say that during the pandemic, so it was like a couple of things during the pandemic because we had the pandemic and then we had George Floyd. So that changed for a lot of us. I would say that you would agree on that as Black photographers after the murder of George Floyd, because then you had companies who were wanted to align with Black photographers, and you were getting these calls or you were getting requests to license your photos. Um, so that happened during the pandemic. For me personally, how it changed is it caused me to really, and I say this now, like I use this hashtag all the time on social media, tell your story. And I keep putting out there as not only an encouragement to other people, but an encouragement to myself. Tell your story. Because for me, that's what I started to do. I started to self assign. I started to more so look at those things or those stories that were important to me, or those stories that I felt weren't being told or weren't getting the attention that they should be. And either I would just do it myself to document, to tell those stories, to share them with other people, let them know what was going on, or it became some of those stories I actually pitched to publications. So for me, what changed was I realized the power in telling my story. I realized the power of people telling their stories. And I think during that time, publications also got hip to that, and they start really leaning on photographers to pitch these stories, because in that moment where they were like looking for content, looking for things, we were coming up with these creative stories. I think things that were happening like right in our backyards, like right in our community, right in our families.
Absolutely. Are there stories out there that you feel like you haven't told yet that you want to tell?
I think there's always like I always feel like there's something around the corner or something that I just haven't connected with yet. There are a couple things that I'm working on, personally that I'll share at a later date. But I think there's always something out there, and I'm just trying to connect the dots, one story at a time. So going back to what has changed, I find that I do a lot more self assignments. I do a lot more self assignments, and a lot of times those are the ones that are really fulfilling. Those are the ones that really speak to my soul.
No, I absolutely love your personal work. And, I think that's something that's come up a lot in this summit and how that also helps you in return get more clients in that same
Yeah,
sense as well.
definitely.
Um, there's a few more just quick questions. When
Mhm.
you are, doing these photos, you're putting it in your archive, how are you copywriting everything and just making sure you protect your work?
Yeah, and I got to get better at this, but I was doing the group copyright, grouping things together under a theme, the copyright. I'm behind. I'm behind on some stuff. So that's a reminder. Thank you, whoever asked that question. That's a reminder to me that I need to get on it. Like, I'm continuing to be out there creating. Now I got to be about the business of, protecting that.
And just thinking about just the field of photo, well, the world of photography, as we all know, have been very white, very male dominated for so long, and still in many ways still is.
Mhm.
And we think about just the avenue of photojournalism, how how have you seen it change since you started? Have you seen more Black women photographers in photojournalism? And if not, what words would you say to inspire somebody to pursue that as as an option, as a field?
And I have, which has been the beautiful thing. You're right, Salima. Yep. We are powerful storytellers. Um, I've seen more out there. You have SB Maney. She's a fellow for the New York Times, and she's covering White House and Capitol Hill things. You have Cameron Smith is one of the official White House photographers. There's two Black women, right there. I've seen like a couple of other out there. There's one actually that, and forgive me, is her last name Kane? I'm forgetting her name. That is an NHL photographer. That's one of the speakers for the summit. And I'm
Oh,
sorry,
Amanda Kane.
Amanda Kane. Thank you. So I'm seeing more Black women in spaces where we weren't, in places like we still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go, but I am, I guess, empowered by those that I have seen starting to come into those spaces, and letting their voices be heard in those spaces where they weren't heard before.
Absolutely. I mean, I know I'm inspired by you constantly. And
Well, thank
because again, we don't see that, right? We don't like when I look at the press pull photos, all I see is a sea of white all the time. It's so hard to actually see, oh, maybe like it's like playing Where's Waldo? Like,
you.
like where are we at in
Yeah,
these images, documenting these moments? And
yeah.
so, it's really just incredible to hear it from you, your own words. There's one more question here from is there someone or some event that you would like to document or photograph that you haven't yet?
Hmm, that's a great question. I would have said it was Alabama, but I did Alabama this past weekend. Um, hmm, I can't think of a specific thing. I'm always trying to challenge myself to do something different or to enter a space where I haven't been before. Um, last year I said, I want to do some unit stills. I hadn't really done that. It seems interesting. So I did get some opportunities to do that. I think I'd like to do some more of that. Um, but in terms of something like that I want to specifically document, I'm in the midst of doing some of that now. So I can't really say like one particular thing at this moment. Um, I just love documenting. I just love telling stories, and I love showing like everyday people just how powerful they are. Sometimes we don't realize our own power, and in that we don't realize the power of our voice. So I love just you know going to those, like something that's ordinary, and just showing people just how extraordinary it is. So any opportunity that I have, to do that, then, that's a good day.
My last question for you is, how do you then, after these long days or these days filled with so much emotion and, whatever the day may be carrying, the gravity of this situation you're documenting, how do you then just release it all?
Yeah, and that I go back to what I said earlier is how I start and end the day with prayer. Because it is like you take in a lot. It can be very emotional. It can be draining, especially for someone who's an empath like myself, because it's like I truly do connect. And it's like I'm feeling like all this emotion and all these things. And so I have to just end that day the same way,
Mhm.
with prayer, and just kind of like try to like separate, from it. And sometimes I just like I'll come back, and after that, then I'll just like do nothing. Like do things that don't require any kind of thinking or emotion or anything. Just kind of like veg out. Um, I'll listen to music. Um, and just connecting. And I want to say this, like community is very important. Community is key. So when you have organizations like Black women photographers, you find your community, you find your tribe, and that's, to me, is like really key on um, things like that are highly charged and emotional, that you're able to come back to your community and know that somebody has your back, and to feel that support, or be able to release, to have that release, and to have somebody say, or a community of people say, like you were doing the thing, like you're doing it, like keep doing what you're doing, like to hear that what you're doing may be inspiring someone else, or someone is taking something that is helping them from what you're doing. It recharges your batteries. At least for me, I can say for me personally, it does. And to know that I'm doing something that's not only my passion, but I know it's my purpose. So anything like that, when I hear from people that say, you know what, like when you said this, or when you did this, like it really, or I was struggling with this, or I was trying to make a decision on this, and then I heard you say this, or I saw you do this, and it encouraged me. Just know that that encourages me. Like you, you being encouraged encourages me. Like that helps to recharge my batteries. So it really is key to have that support, to have community that you can share and download, and know that somebody has your back and someone is cheering you on, or someone is there supporting you, or saying, yes, sis, like you got it, like you're doing it.
Well, doing it you are, Miss Cheriss. Thank you. Thank you. This charged my battery back. And I hope after this you do absolutely nothing. I know it's been a long day.
Until tomorrow morning, right?
Until tomorrow, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and the stories you shared and just your wisdom. Truly, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me, Polly. But I just want to say, like, thank you for being you, and just thank you for, your heart. Thank you for this community and the summit that you're doing. It really is like you're recharging a lot of people's battery. So, hopefully all of that energy is energizing you.
Absolutely. It really is.
Also know the power of no. Like feel that and accept that.
It is it's something that we've all heard, but that reminder and just reminding yourself that it is okay, that you can say no, that you have that power. I mean, I will just replay this conversation probably once a month.
Right.
I mean, anything else that you would love to share with us?
I will say I have an exhibit coming up. Anybody in the DC area, on May 6th at the Leica store, DC. It's my series called Soul Connection. So that will be opening on May 6th, and it'll be there through August.
You all, I'm telling you, I saw this. Is it the same one? Because if it's the same one,
some of it, and then I've added some new.
Okay. Oh, now I need a mark. I need to go see the rest. Because if you were moved by the story that she shared, Dr. Maya or Chatway, I mean, I'm telling you all, that Soul Connection, May 6th, we have a date. We have something to be. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you.
This has been beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening and tuning in. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as me. Bye, everyone.